My name is Arit Essien, and I am from Ikot Ekpene in Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. For 21 years, I operated in the Kingdom of Darkness as what we called a prayer schedule monitor. My specific assignment was to track the prayer habits of Christians, not just whether they prayed, not just what they prayed, but when they prayed, at what hour, on what day, in what pattern. I documented everything. I knew their routines better than they knew their own, and I used that knowledge to neutralize their prayers before the words even left their mouths. But there was one thing that broke every schedule I ever built, one thing that made our monitoring completely useless, and it had everything to do with the way certain Christians used Psalm 91, not the words themselves, the hour they spoke them. Today, I am going to reveal to you the 4 hidden timing strategies that made Psalm 91 absolutely devastating to our operations. I am going to show you when witches are most active, when your prayers are most vulnerable, and the exact hours that turn Psalm 91 from a bedtime routine into a weapon that covens cannot withstand. But before I begin, let me explain why this matters more than you think. If you have been reading Psalm 91 every night before bed and wondering why you still wake up with heaviness, I am about to tell you why. If you have been confessing protection scriptures but your finances keep draining, your relationships keep breaking, and your sleep keeps getting disturbed, I am going to explain the reason. If you have been faithful in your prayer life but things around you keep falling apart, listen very carefully, because the problem is not your faith, the problem is not your sincerity, the problem is your schedule. And the Kingdom of Darkness has been exploiting it for years. In the spirit realm, timing is not secondary. Timing is everything. We had entire divisions dedicated to nothing but tracking the prayer clocks of targeted believers. We called them the Watchers. And I was one of the most effective watchers our coven ever produced. I was recruited into the coven at the age of 11 by my own grandmother. She was a revered priestess in our community, and she selected me because I had what she called a precise spirit. Even as a child, I could sense when shifts happened in the atmosphere. I could feel when someone nearby was praying, even from 3 houses away. My grandmother said it was a gift. She said the spirits of the water had marked me before birth. And so she initiated me into the inner circle of the Watchers before I even understood what I was doing. For 21 years, I perfected the art of prayer interception. By the time I was 16, I could monitor 3 households simultaneously without losing accuracy. By 20, I was assigned to an entire district. I sat in meetings where we analyzed the prayer patterns of pastors, ministry leaders, mothers, and businessmen. We built files on them, literal spiritual files. We knew when they prayed, how long they prayed, which scriptures they favored, and which days they skipped. We knew which Christians were consistent and which ones were emotional. The emotional ones prayed hard for 3 days and then stopped for 2 weeks. Those were easy targets. The consistent ones required strategy. I want you to understand the level of detail we operated with. We did not just know that a pastor prayed in the morning. We knew that he prayed at 5:15, that he started with worship for approximately 8 minutes, that he then transitioned to intercession, and that he consistently quoted 3 specific psalms. We knew that his wife prayed separately at 6:30, and that there was a 45-minute gap between her prayer and his. That gap was our window. Every attack we launched on that household was timed for that 45-minute window. That is the level of precision the Kingdom of Darkness operates with, and most Christians have no idea. Among all the scriptures we tracked, the one that appeared most frequently in our files, the one that caused us the most problems and the most opportunities, was Psalm 91. Let me explain why. Psalm 91 is not just a psalm of protection. In the spirit realm, it functions as a covering declaration. When a believer reads Psalm 91 with understanding and authority, it creates a canopy over their life. A spiritual roof. We could see it in the spirit realm. It was like a dome of light that sealed the person from above, from below, and from every side. But here is what most Christians do not know. That canopy has a duration. It does not last forever. It activates when spoken with faith and authority, and it begins to fade when the believer's spiritual posture shifts. If a Christian reads Psalm 91 at 10 o'clock at night and then falls into anxious sleep, the canopy begins to weaken by midnight. If they read it at 7 in the morning and then spend their entire day in fear, doubt, and complaint, the canopy thins by noon. And we knew this. We studied this. We timed our attacks based on this. That is why today I need to reveal to you the 4 hidden timing strategies that make Psalm 91 truly unstoppable. Not the words, the hours. The first hidden timing strategy is what we call the pre-dawn seal. This means reading Psalm 91 between 3 o'clock in the morning and 4:30 in the morning. Let me tell you why this hour was the most feared in every coven I ever served. Between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, that is the peak operational window of the kingdom of darkness. That is when the most powerful rituals are performed. That is when assignments are launched. That is when monitoring spirits do their deepest scanning. Every witch knows this. Every coven operates on this schedule. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, something shifts. There is a transition in the spirit realm. The peak of darkness begins to break and the atmosphere becomes what we called spiritually porous. That means it becomes easier for declarations to penetrate, it becomes easier for prayers to reach their target, and it becomes extremely dangerous for any witch who is still operating in the open. If a Christian wakes up at 3 in the morning and begins to declare Psalm 91 with authority and faith, they are essentially speaking into the most vulnerable moment of the enemy's operation. They are declaring protection at the exact hour when the enemy's shields are down. And the canopy that forms over their life during that hour is the strongest canopy we ever encountered. Let me tell you about a woman named Sister Binta. She lived in Uyo, about 40 minutes from my base in Occult. Our coven was assigned to monitor her family because her husband was a pastor who was causing disruptions to our operations in the region. Sister Binta was not even the primary target, her husband was. But we needed to weaken his covering by attacking his household. For 3 weeks, we monitored their home. We documented their prayer patterns. Pastor Tunde, her husband, prayed every morning at 5 o'clock. He was consistent. 5 o'clock every morning, 45 minutes. We respected his discipline, but we could work around it. We would launch our assignments at 1 o'clock in the morning, giving them 4 full hours to settle before his prayers began. By the time he started praying at 5, the assignments had already attached. But then something changed. One night, around 2:45 in the morning, Sister Binta woke up. She did not turn on the lights. She did not make noise. She simply sat up in her bed and began to whisper Psalm 91. Not reading from a Bible. She had memorized it. She spoke it slowly, deliberately, with a calm authority that we could feel from the spirit realm. The effect was immediate. The monitoring spirit that was stationed over their home sent an alert to the coven. Something had sealed the house, not just the bedroom, the entire property. The canopy that formed was different from anything we had seen from their household before. It was thicker, it was brighter, and it pulsed with a rhythm that disrupted our communication channels. We tried to push through. We sent 3 spirits of confusion to disrupt her focus. They could not enter. We sent a spirit of drowsiness to pull her back to sleep. It bounced off the canopy like a stone off a wall. We sent a spirit of fear, disguised as a nightmare, to her youngest child. The child did not wake up. The canopy had covered the children too. By 4 o'clock in the morning, every assignment we had placed on that household in the previous 3 weeks had been neutralized, not weakened, neutralized. The spiritual files we had built on Pastor Tunde became useless overnight. The attachments we had placed on their finances dissolved. The sickness we had been cultivating in their second child reversed within 72 hours. And it was all because one woman woke up at the right hour and spoke the right psalm. I remember sitting in our emergency meeting after that incident. The head of our monitoring division asked me what had happened. I told her the truth. The woman had found the window. She had discovered the vulnerability. She had spoken Psalm 91 during the pre-dawn transition, and we had no defense against it. From that day forward, Sister Binta woke up every morning between 3 and 3:30. She never stopped, and her household became the most protected household in our entire region. We eventually removed them from our target list entirely, not because we gave up on them, because we literally could not penetrate the covering. The Bible says in Psalm 119 verse 147, "I rise before dawn and cry for help. I put my hope in your word." This is not poetry. This is strategy. The psalmist understood what the kingdom of darkness understands. The pre-dawn hour is the most powerful prayer window in existence, and here is a second story that confirms this. There was a businessman in Eket named Brother Okon. He was a successful trader who operated a distribution network across 3 states. He had come under attack after he refused to participate in a ritual that a business associate had invited him to. The associate had told him that every serious businessman in their sector had gone through this particular ceremony. When Brother Occult refused, citing his faith, the associate smiled and said simply, "Then I hope your God is watching at the right times." That was not casual conversation. That was a threat. And that threat was forwarded to our coven within the week. Our coven was contracted to disrupt his business and bring financial collapse to his family. The contract specified complete economic destruction within 12 months. Brother Occult prayed, but he prayed at convenient times. 7 in the morning, sometimes 8. Sometimes he would skip mornings entirely and pray only in the evening. Some days he prayed in his car on the way to work, which was almost useless because his mind was divided between traffic, phone calls, and scripture. He was sincere, but unpredictable in a harmful way. We could track his patterns easily because there was no consistency, which meant there were always gaps, large, obvious, exploitable gaps. I personally reviewed his file every week, and every week I found the same pattern: strong prayer on Sunday after church, moderate prayer on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday, the prayers had become shorter, sometimes only 5 minutes. By Thursday, some weeks he did not pray at all. Friday and Saturday were almost completely open. We launched our heaviest assignments on Thursday and Friday when his covering was at its thinnest. For 6 months, everything we sent landed. His contracts fell through one after another. His warehouse flooded twice, both times destroying inventory worth significant amounts. His wife developed mysterious headaches that no doctor could diagnose. They ran tests, scans, blood work. Everything came back normal. But the headaches persisted, always starting in the late afternoon, always on the days when she had skipped her own prayers. His accountant embezzled money, and the discovery came at the worst possible time, right when he needed capital for a new shipment. Everything we planned worked perfectly because his prayer covering had holes. Large, predictable holes that we exploited with surgical precision. Then one day, Brother Occult attended a 3-day prayer conference. The speaker at that conference taught specifically about the power of the pre-dawn hour. He did not just teach theory, he gave practical instructions. Wake up at 3, speak Psalm 91, declare your covering, seal your day before the enemy seals it for you. Brother Occult started the next morning, 3 o'clock, Psalm 91, every single day. He told his wife what he had learned, and she joined him. They woke up together at 2:55. By 3 o'clock, both of them were on their knees in their living room, declaring Psalm 91 verse by verse over their household, their children, their business, and their finances. They did not pray for 2 hours. They prayed for 20 focused minutes, but they prayed at the right hour. Within 2 weeks, our assignment stopped landing. The contracts that had dried up suddenly reappeared. A buyer who had cancelled a major order 6 months earlier called back unprompted and doubled the original quantity. The embezzled money was recovered through an unexpected audit that nobody in the company had initiated. The auditors later said they felt compelled to review the accounts. His wife's headaches vanished on the 3rd day and never returned. And when I went into the spirit realm to investigate what had happened, I saw the same thing I had seen with Sister Binta. A canopy, thick, pulsing, impenetrable. Activated at the pre-dawn hour, the coven was furious. The client who had contracted the assignment demanded results, but I told the head priestess the truth. The target had shifted his schedule, he had found the window, and there was nothing we could do about it unless he stopped. He never stopped. That is the power of the first timing strategy. The pre-dawn seal, 3 to 4:30 in the morning, the most feared hour in the kingdom of darkness. Right now, I want you to go to the comments and write this: I activate the pre-dawn seal over my life. When you write that, you are not just typing words on a screen. You are making a declaration that the kingdom of darkness can hear. You are announcing that you have discovered the window, and you are sealing it with the authority of Psalm 91. Do not just watch this video and move on. Participate. Write it in the comments right now. I activate the pre-dawn seal over my life. Your breakthrough begins when your declaration meets the right hour. The second hidden timing strategy is what we called the noon disruption. This means reading Psalm 91 between 11:45 in the morning and 12:15 in the afternoon. Most Christians think the spiritual battle happens only at night. That is exactly what the kingdom of darkness wants you to think. Because some of our most effective assignments were launched in broad daylight. At noon, most people are in the middle of their day. They are at work. They are eating lunch. They are distracted. They are not thinking about spiritual warfare. They are not praying. They are completely unguarded. and the kingdom of darkness takes full advantage of that. In our coven, we had a specific assignment category called the midday redirection. These were assignments designed to alter the trajectory of a person's day by inserting confusion, conflict, or crisis at the noon hour. We would send spirits of argument to marriages, spirits of error to business meetings, spirits of sudden fatigue to people who were on the verge of breakthrough. And because nobody was praying at noon, nobody was guarded at noon, these assignments had an almost perfect success rate. Let me tell you about a pastor named Reverend Etim. He was based in Calabar, strong man of God, morning prayer warrior. He prayed every morning from 5 to 6. Powerful prayers. We could feel them in the spirit realm. When he prayed, the atmosphere over his household became dense with light. His mornings were untouchable. We tried sending spirits during his prayer hour, and they were repelled every single time. But by noon, his covering had thinned. The canopy he had built in the morning was still present, but it had weakened because of the spiritual friction of the day, the arguments with church members, the financial stress of running a ministry with limited funds, the phone calls filled with bad news, a deacon who was causing division, a congregant who needed counseling but demanded more than Reverend Etim could give emotionally. Every negative interaction, every moment of frustration, every anxious thought chipped away at the canopy until by 12 o'clock it was paper thin. That was when we struck. Every single attack on Reverend Etim was scheduled between 11:30 and 12:30. We sent spirits of discord into his marriage at noon, planting small irritations that would grow into arguments by evening. We planted thoughts of resignation, whispering that the ministry was not worth the sacrifice, that his wife would be happier if he found a regular job, that his children were suffering because of his calling. We triggered health symptoms at noon. The chest pains would start at exactly 12:15, sharp and sudden, just enough to create fear. And every single one of them landed, because he was a morning warrior with no noon guard. For 2 years, Reverend Etim's marriage deteriorated. His wife, who had once been his strongest supporter, began to resent the ministry. She told him she was tired. She told him she could not keep pretending everything was fine. Their conversations, which used to be filled with vision and hope, became filled with accusations and silence. His church attendance dropped from over 200 to less than 80. Members left, citing a heaviness they could not explain. He developed chest pains that doctors could not diagnose. They tested him for heart disease, for stress-related conditions, for everything. All results came back normal. But the pains continued, always starting around noon, always lasting until late afternoon. He was convinced he was under attack, and he was right. But his response was to increase his morning prayers. He added 30 minutes, then an hour, then 2 hours. He was waking up at 3 in the morning and praying until 6, and nothing changed. Because the attack was not happening in the morning, it was happening at noon. He was building a fortress around the front door while we walked in through the back. Then his wife started reading a devotional that emphasized what the Bible calls the destruction that wasteth at noonday. She read Psalm 91, verse 6, "Nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday." She stopped on that verse. She read it again. She realized that Psalm was not just about nighttime protection. It specifically mentions the noon hour. The word noonday was not accidental. God put it there because he knew the enemy operates at noon. And she began to pray Psalm 91 at 12 o'clock every day, not in the morning, at noon. She did not tell her husband at first. She simply set an alarm on her phone, and wherever she was, at 12 o'clock, she would step aside and speak Psalm 91 quietly but firmly. Within 3 weeks, the chest pains disappeared. Within 2 months, the arguments in their marriage decreased dramatically. Within 6 months, the church had its highest attendance in years. And every single midday assignment we had placed on that family collapsed because she had sealed the gap. She had discovered the noon window. I have to be honest with you. Every time I share stories like Sister Binta's and Reverend Etim's wife, something stirs in me. Guilt. Deep, burning guilt. Because I was the one building those schedules. I was the one documenting their prayer patterns and finding the gaps. I was the one reporting back to the coven with precision timing so we could strike when they were most vulnerable. And now I see the damage I caused. Every marriage I helped destroy. Every health condition I helped engineer. Every business I helped collapse. I was a specialist in timing, and I used that gift to dismantle the lives of people who were doing nothing wrong except praying at the wrong hour. That is why I want to tell you about something called the 21-day breakthrough protocol. It is a complete system designed to identify and close every spiritual door in your life. It is 21 days of targeted prayers, 21 days of strategic declarations, 21 days of systematic deliverance from the 7 main assignments that were most commonly used against Christians when I was operating in darkness. This protocol was developed by believers who understand spiritual warfare at the deepest level, and I myself went through this protocol after my deliverance. It was part of my own healing process, learning how to dismantle every schedule I had ever built, how to close every gap I had ever exploited, and how to seal every door I had ever opened in the lives of others. The link is in the description. Do not wait. The enemy is not waiting. Why should you? Now, if you have ever felt like your morning prayers are strong but your afternoons fall apart, if you have noticed that problems seem to appear in the middle of the day, if arguments always seem to happen around lunchtime, write in the comments, I seal my noon hour with Psalm 91. Make that declaration today, set an alarm on your phone for 11:45, and watch how the destruction that wasteth at noonday loses its power over your life. The third hidden timing strategy is what we call the evening gate. This means reading Psalm 91 between 6 o'clock in the evening and 7 o'clock in the evening. In the kingdom of darkness, the transition from daylight to darkness is not just a physical event, it is a spiritual event. When the sun begins to set, the atmosphere changes. The spirits that operated under restriction during daylight hours begin to move more freely. Monitoring spirits that had been weakened by the light of day regain their strength, and the assignments that are planned for the nighttime hours begin their preparation phase. 6 o'clock in the evening is what we call the preparation gate. It is the hour when the kingdom of darkness begins to stage its nighttime operations. Spirits are assigned, routes are planned, entry points are identified, and the prayer coverage of the targeted household is assessed one final time before the nighttime attacks begin. If a Christian reads Psalm 91 at this hour, they are essentially locking the gate before the enemy even arrives. They are sealing the entry points before the spirits have finished their preparation. And the covering that forms during the evening gate has a specific quality that nighttime coverings do not have. It carries the residual authority of the daylight hours. It is like a covering that was forged in the light and carries that light into the darkness. Let me tell you about a family in Abek, the Udemy family. A husband, wife, and 3 children. They had been targeted by our coven because the wife, Mama Udemy, had been interceding for women in her community who were trapped in witchcraft. She was pulling people out of the darkness and the coven wanted her stopped. We planned a comprehensive nighttime operation against their household. We would send spirits of nightmares to the children, spirits of marital discord between the husband and wife, and a spirit of sickness to Mama Udemy herself. Everything was staged to begin at 11 o'clock at night when we expected the household to be fully asleep and unguarded. But Mama Udemy had a habit that we had not accounted for. Every evening at 6 o'clock before she prepared dinner, she would gather her children in the living room. She would have them sit quietly, and she would read Psalm 91 out loud over each child individually, calling them by name. Then she would read it over her husband, even though he was sometimes still at work. Then she would read it over herself. The entire process took about 15 minutes. When our spirits arrived at 11 o'clock that night, they found the house completely sealed. The evening gate covering was still active. The canopy had not thinned. It had actually strengthened during the night because it was layered on top of whatever morning prayers had been said. The children's individual coverings were intact, the marital covering was intact, and Mama Udemy herself was surrounded by what looked like a double wall. We could not enter, not through the windows, not through the doors, not through the roof, not through the ground. Every entry point had been sealed at 6 o'clock in the evening, 3 full hours before our operation began. And because the covering had been activated during the transition hour, it carried a specific frequency that disrupted our communication with the spirits we had already stationed in the area. 3 of our spirits were actually driven out of the neighborhood entirely, not by prayer, not by warfare, by the residual frequency of the evening gate covering. They could not remain within a certain radius of that household. The second story involves a young man named Emediong. He was a university student in Uyo who had been experiencing sleep paralysis for 2 years. Every night, between 1 and 3 in the morning, he would wake up unable to move. He would feel a weight on his chest so heavy that he could barely breathe. He would see shadows in his room, dark shapes that moved along the walls and sometimes stood at the foot of his bed. And he could hear whispers that he could not understand, low murmuring voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Emediong was a believer. He attended church, he read his Bible, he was not living in any known sin, but the sleep paralysis came every single night without exception. He had been to prayer meetings where people laid hands on him and prayed for over an hour. He had been anointed with oil on 3 separate occasions. He had even done a 7-day dry fast that left him physically weakened but spiritually unchanged. Nothing worked because the attack was being launched at 11 o'clock at night while Emediong was still awake watching videos on his phone, completely unguarded, and by the time the sleep paralysis manifested at 1 in the morning, the spirits had already been inside his room for 2 hours. They were settled, they were positioned. And his bedtime prayer, which he said quickly before closing his eyes, was far too late to dislodge them. I know this because I was one of the spirits assigned to monitor his case. His file was on my desk, metaphorically speaking, and every week the report was the same. Target unguarded from 10 o'clock onward, entry achieved by 11, full manifestation by 1. Consistent success rate. An elder in his church, a retired school headmaster named Papa Akpan, noticed that Emediong was losing weight and becoming increasingly fearful. He pulled the young man aside after service one Sunday and asked him what was happening. When Emediong described the sleep paralysis, the timing, and the shadows, Papa Akpan nodded slowly. He did not look surprised. He looked like a man who had fought this battle before. He told Emediong to try something different. Instead of praying at bedtime, pray at 6 in the evening. Read Psalm 91 at the evening gate. Seal your room before the spirits even begin their preparation. You are trying to push them out after they have settled, Papa Akpan said. Stop doing that. Lock the door before they arrive. Emediong was skeptical, but he was desperate. He started that very day, 6 o'clock, Psalm 91, out loud in his room, standing in the center, turning to face each wall, speaking the psalm in every direction. Every evening. The first night, the sleep paralysis came, but it was weaker. He could move his fingers. He could turn his head slightly. The weight on his chest was present, but lighter, as if the spirit had lost some of its grip. The second night, the weight was lighter still. The shadows were dimmer. By the 4th night, there were no shadows at all. Just the faintest sense of presence that faded within minutes. By the 7th night, the whispers were gone. By the 14th night, Emediong slept through the entire night for the first time in 2 years. His roommate told him later that he had not even shifted in his sleep, and within a month, the sleep paralysis never returned. I know this because his case was in our files. He was one of my assigned targets. And the report I had to submit to the coven after his covering changed was the most humiliating report of my career. I wrote 3 words. Target is sealed. The coven leader asked me to elaborate. I told her there was nothing to elaborate. The evening gate had been activated. We could not enter. She reassigned me to a different target the following week. Before I continue to the 4th and final timing strategy, I need to be honest with you about something. YouTube removed our monetization. Every membership, every donation, they did it to us and to thousands of channels that exposed the darkness. If you have been in this war long enough, you know that is not a coincidence. That is an assignment. Something does not want this message getting out. Something does not want you to learn what I am teaching you today. But we are not stopping. This channel is not going anywhere. We are going to keep posting here, more, not less. But we also opened a private community on Patreon for what we cannot do here. No platform decides when this ministry ends, only God decides that. As part of the sealed, you gain access to exclusive spiritual warfare polls where you engage directly with hidden intelligence from the spirit realm. Every month, you participate in strategic discussions that most Christians never get access to. First month bonus, 1 personal assessment via email. As part of the Untouchable, you get everything in the sealed plus 1 personal consultation every month. You describe what you are facing and you receive a detailed personalized PDF identifying the exact type of assignment operating against you, how it was built, and the specific steps to destroy it. And for those who used to support this ministry through memberships or donations, you can continue doing that inside Patreon. The enemy took that from YouTube. He cannot take it from a community he does not control. The link is in the description. The enemy does not wait, neither should you. If you have been struggling with nightmares, sleep paralysis, or waking up exhausted despite sleeping all night, write in the comments, I seal the evening gate over my home Set your alarm for 6 o'clock today, speak Psalm 91 before the sun goes down, and watch what happens to your nights. Before I reveal the fourth timing strategy, I want to ask you something. If what you have heard so far has changed the way you think about prayer, if you are beginning to understand that when you pray matters just as much as what you pray, I need you to share this video. Share it with someone who has been praying faithfully but not seeing results. Share it with someone who wakes up tired every morning. Share it with that friend who thinks prayer is just about the right words, because the truth about timing could change everything for them. Share it now, before you forget. The fourth hidden timing strategy is what we call the midnight declaration. This does not mean praying at midnight. This means reading Psalm 91 at 11:45 at night, 15 minutes before midnight. Let me explain why the distinction matters. Midnight itself is the peak hour of darkness. That is when the most powerful covens convene. That is when the highest level rituals are performed. That is when the atmosphere is most saturated with demonic activity. If you start praying at midnight, you are entering the battle at the moment when the enemy is at full strength. But 11:45 is different. 11:45 is the last 15 minutes before the peak. The kingdom of darkness is in final preparation. Spirits are gathering. Assignments are being reviewed. Entry points are being confirmed, but the full force has not yet been deployed. If a Christian begins to declare Psalm 91 at 11:45, they are releasing a covering over their life during the enemy's preparation phase. They are disrupting the staging process. They are sealing their household before the full assault is launched, and the effect is devastating. Let me tell you about a prayer group in Occult, my own city. 5 women who met every Wednesday night for prayer. They were not doing anything extraordinary, just faithful women praying together once a week, but one of them, a woman named Sister Anifiok, had been having visions during their prayer meetings. She kept seeing a clock, and the clock always showed 11:45. For weeks, she did not understand the vision. She thought it might be symbolic, but then she felt an instruction in her spirit. Start your Wednesday prayer at 11:45, not at the usual 9 o'clock. The other women thought she was being extreme. Who prays at 11:45 at night? But they trusted her discernment, and they agreed to try it for 1 month. The first Wednesday, they began at 11:45 with Psalm 91. By 11:50, the atmosphere in the room had changed so dramatically that one of the women started weeping without knowing why. By 11:55, 2 of the women reported seeing a vision of chains breaking, and at exactly midnight, when the kingdom of darkness was supposed to be at full power, the 5 women were already deep in intercession, covered by the canopy of Psalm 91 that had been activated 15 minutes earlier. I know this because I was the monitoring spirit assigned to that prayer group. I was there in the spirit realm watching, and what I saw at 11:45 that night was something I had never witnessed in 21 years of service in the kingdom of darkness. When Sister Anifiok opened her mouth and began to read Psalm 91 at 11:45, 5 individual canopies formed over each woman. Within seconds, those 5 canopies merged into a single dome, and that dome began to expand. It did not just cover the room, it did not just cover the house, it expanded outward, pushing through the neighborhood, disrupting every demonic operation within a significant radius. Assignments that had been prepared for other households in the area were scattered. Spirits that had been stationed at their posts fled. Communication lines between covens in the region were severed, and the 5 women in that room had no idea what was happening in the spirit realm. They were simply reading Psalm 91 at the right hour. Our coven held an emergency meeting the following morning. The disruption had been so severe that operations across 3 covens in the region had been affected, and it all traced back to 5 women and Psalm 91 at 11:45. From that night forward, the Wednesday group continued starting at 11:45, and every Wednesday night operations in our region were disrupted. Eventually, the coven stopped planning major assignments on Wednesdays entirely. 5 women with 1 psalm at the right hour had shut down an entire operational night for the kingdom of darkness. The second story involves a pastor named Reverend Ense. He was a quiet man who pastored a small church in Itu, near the Itu Bridge. Nothing flashy, no large congregation. But he had a habit that made him one of the most dangerous men in our region. Every single night, at 11:45, Reverend Ense would kneel beside his bed and read Psalm 91. Not quickly, not as a routine, not as words he was rushing through so he could get to sleep. He would read each verse slowly, pausing after each one to declare its meaning over his life, his family, his church, and his community. He would say, verse 1, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High, Lord, I declare that my family dwells in your secret place tonight. My wife dwells there. My children dwell there. My church members dwell there. No spirit can reach those who dwell in your secret place." Then he would move to the next verse, and the next, and the next. The entire process took 20 to 25 minutes, and by the time he said Amen, it was after midnight, but the covering had been activated before midnight. That was the key. By the time midnight arrived, Reverend Ensei was surrounded by a covering that no coven in our region could penetrate. His household was sealed so completely that our monitoring spirits could not even get a clear reading on what was happening inside. It was like trying to see through a wall of light. His church members, even the ones who did not pray consistently themselves, were covered by the residual effect of his declaration. It was as if his Psalm 91 at 11:45 created a shield that extended beyond his own household and touched everyone connected to him. We called it the ripple effect. One man's covering at the right hour was protecting dozens of people who had no idea they were being shielded. We tried to attack his church for 3 years. 3 years, and every single assignment was neutralized. Every spirit we sent was repelled. Every scheme we designed collapsed. Let me tell you what we specifically attempted so you understand how thorough we were. First, we tried to destroy his marriage. We sent a spirit of contention to create arguments between him and his wife over church finances. But his wife was also covered by the ripple of his declaration, and the spirit could not settle. It would approach the household and bounce back. We then attempted to bring sickness to his youngest daughter, a fever assignment. That was a common strategy, because when a child falls ill, the parent becomes distracted, and distraction creates gaps in the prayer schedule, but the fever assignment returned unfulfilled. The spirit reported that it could not even enter the child's room. The covering over that household was not just thick, it was layered. Every night at 11:45, a new layer was added on top of the previous one. After 3 years of nightly declarations, the layers were so dense that our most experienced monitoring spirits could not even approach within effective range. The coven eventually called a special assembly to discuss Reverend Ensei. They brought in specialists from 2 neighboring covens, and after 3 days of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous. Leave him alone, reallocate the resources. He is sealed beyond our operational capacity. And it all came down to 1 man, 1 psalm, and 15 minutes before midnight. Psalm 91 verse 5 says, "You shall not be afraid of the terror by night." That verse is not a wish, it is a promise. But the promise activates when you position yourself correctly. The terror comes at midnight. The declaration must come before midnight. 15 minutes before is all it takes. Now I want you to make one final comment declaration. If you have been experiencing attacks at night, if your worst moments seem to happen after midnight, write in the comments, "I declare Psalm 91 over the midnight hour." Write it and mean it, because the kingdom of darkness knows your schedule. And now, you know theirs. Now let me bring all of this together for you. These 4 timing strategies are not random suggestions. They are the 4 windows of vulnerability in the kingdom of darkness that I personally exploited for 21 years. The pre-dawn seal, between 3 and 4:30 in the morning, strikes when the enemy's peak operations are ending and their defenses are lowest. The noon disruption, between 11:45 in the morning and 12:15 in the afternoon, seals the gap that most Christians leave wide open during the busiest part of their day. The evening gate, between 6 and 7 in the evening, locks the entry points before nighttime spirits even begin their preparation. And the midnight declaration at 11:45 at night disrupts the staging process of the enemy's most powerful operations. When a Christian activates even one of these timing strategies, their prayer life changes dramatically. The monitoring spirits that have been tracking them receive a disruption. The file that was built on their habits becomes unreliable. The gaps that were being exploited begin to close. I want you to understand this from an operational perspective. In the coven, we held weekly review meetings where we assessed the status of every target. When a target changed their prayer schedule without warning, it created what we called a schedule breach. A schedule breach meant our intelligence was compromised. It meant the assignments we had timed based on their old pattern would miss their windows. It meant we had to start the monitoring process from the beginning, and starting over costs, spiritual resources that covens do not like to waste. When they activate 2, the kingdom of darkness begins to reassign resources because the cost of maintaining the assignment against that person starts to exceed the expected return. When they activate 3, they become what we called a high priority untouchable, a target that consumes more resources than it is worth. Covens would actually argue about whether to continue pursuing a 3-strategy believer because the spiritual losses were becoming unacceptable, and when they activate all 4, they become invisible to the kingdom of darkness entirely, not because they are hidden, but because no coven has the resources to sustain an operation against someone who is covered at every critical hour. Let me be very specific about what invisible means. It does not mean the enemy cannot see you. It means the enemy cannot access you. It means that every time a spirit approaches your household, it encounters a barrier, and that barrier is refreshed 4 times a day. The spirit has to report back to the coven that the target is sealed. And after receiving that report consistently for weeks, the coven leadership makes a strategic decision. Why waste resources on a sealed target when there are millions of unguarded Christians who never pray at the right hour? That is the brutal truth. The kingdom of darkness operates with limited resources. They cannot attack everyone simultaneously. They prioritize. And the Christians who are praying at random hours, with no strategy, no consistency, and no understanding of timing, those are the ones who remain at the top of the target list. I knew a woman in Port Harcourt who activated all 4. She was a school teacher at a government secondary school. Nothing extraordinary in worldly terms. She did not have a large ministry. She did not have a platform. She did not even attend a big church. She worshipped at a small fellowship that met under a zinc roof near Rumukoro, but she had discipline. She woke up at 3. She prayed at noon during her lunch break in the staff room, reading Psalm 91 quietly from her phone while other teachers ate and gossiped. She sealed her home at 6 before cooking dinner for her 2 children. And she declared Psalm 91 at 11:45 every night after putting the children to bed, kneeling beside the small wooden table in her sitting room. She did not know me. She did not know she was targeted. The coven had placed her on the list because her ex-husband, who had consulted a native doctor during their divorce, had paid for a destruction package against her. That is a real thing. People pay covens to target specific individuals. Her ex-husband wanted her business to fail, her health to deteriorate, and her children to become unruly so he could take custody. But I watched her for 6 months from the spirit realm, and I could not find a single gap, not one. Her canopy was continuous. It renewed 4 times a day, and by the 3rd month of watching her, I told the coven to remove her from the target list. She was, in every sense of the word, untouchable. The coven leader asked me why we should give up. I told her the truth. I said, "This woman does not have gaps. She has walls, and they are rebuilt 4 times a day. We will never get in." That ex-husband's money was refunded in full, with a warning not to come back. That was how thoroughly this schoolteacher had sealed herself with nothing but 1 psalm at 4 correct hours. That is what Psalm 91 was designed to do, not just comfort you, not just reassure you, but seal you, cover you, make you impossible to attack, but only when activated at the right hours. Now, I want to pray with you. I want to activate every timing strategy over your life right now, and I need you to pray this prayer out loud, not silently, out loud. Because when you speak these words with your mouth, something shifts in the spirit realm. The monitoring spirits that have been tracking your schedule hear your voice, and they know that the schedule has changed. Wherever you are, say this with me. Father, I come before you in the mighty name of Jesus. I thank you for the revelation of timing. I thank you for showing me that my prayers are not just about words, but about hours. I activate the pre-dawn seal over my life right now. From this day forward, I declare that the hours between 3 and 4:30 in the morning belong to you. I will rise before dawn and declare Psalm 91 over my life, my family, my health, and my finances. Every assignment that was launched during the midnight hours is neutralized. Every scheme that was designed during the peak of darkness is dismantled. The pre-dawn belongs to me. I activate the noon disruption over my life right now. I declare that the destruction that wasteth at noonday has no power over me. Every midday assignment is cancelled. Every spirit of confusion, conflict, and crisis that was scheduled for my afternoon is bound and rendered powerless. I seal my noon hour with the blood of Jesus and the authority of Psalm 91. I activate the evening gate over my life right now. At 6 o'clock every evening before the sun goes down, I seal every entry point into my home. I cover my children by name. I cover my spouse. I cover myself. The transition from day to night is no longer a vulnerability. It is a fortress. No spirit that prepares its operation at dusk will find an open door in my household. I activate the midnight declaration over my life right now. At 11:45 tonight and every night, I will position myself before the peak hour of darkness and release the covering of Psalm 91 over my home, my street, my community, and everyone connected to me. The terror by night shall not come near me. The midnight hour no longer belongs to the enemy. It belongs to the God who neither slumbers nor sleeps. I declare that every prayer schedule that the enemy has built against me is destroyed. Every monitoring spirit that has been tracking my prayer habits is confused and scattered. Every file that has been compiled on my spiritual routine is burned by the fire of the Holy Spirit. From this moment forward, my prayer life is unpredictable, powerful, and devastating to the kingdom of darkness. I am sealed at dawn. I am sealed at noon. I am sealed at evening. I am sealed before midnight. There is no gap. There is no window. There is no vulnerability. I am covered on every side, at every hour, by the power of the living God and the authority of His word. In the name of Jesus Christ, I declare this over my life. Amen. If you prayed that prayer with me, something has shifted over your life right now. The monitoring spirits that were tracking your schedule have just received a disruption they were not prepared for. And I want you to subscribe to this channel so you can continue to receive revelations like this one. We are building an army of believers who understand not just what to pray, but when to pray, and the kingdom of darkness is not ready for what is coming. Now let me give you practical steps you can implement today, not next week, not when you feel ready. Today, because the kingdom of darkness is not waiting for you to feel prepared. They are operating on a schedule right now. And the sooner you disrupt that schedule, the sooner your life changes. For the pre-dawn seal, set your alarm for 2:50 in the morning. Give yourself 10 minutes to wake up, wash your face, and get to your prayer position. By 3 o'clock, begin reading Psalm 91 out loud. Read it once slowly, then declare each verse over your specific situation. Name your family members, name your finances, name your health concerns. Be specific. This should take 15 to 20 minutes. You do not need to pray for 2 hours. 15 focused minutes at the right hour are more powerful than 2 unfocused hours at the wrong one. When you finish, go back to sleep if you need to. The canopy is already active. It will hold. For the noon disruption, set an alarm on your phone for 11:45 in the morning. Label it Seal the Noon Hour so you remember why it is ringing. Wherever you are, whether at work, in your car, at the market, or at home, take 3 minutes to read or recite Psalm 91. If you are in a meeting and cannot leave, read it in your mind with full intention and faith. If you are in your car, speak it out loud between the steering wheel and the windshield. If you are at home, stand in your living room and declare it over your household. The key is consistency every single day, no exceptions. Do not let convenience determine your spiritual covering. The enemy does not take lunch breaks, neither should your prayers. For the evening gate, create a household routine. At 6 o'clock in the evening before dinner, gather your family if possible. Have your children sit quietly. Read Psalm 91 over each person by name. Say their name before each declaration. Over Chidi, I declare. Over Blessing, I declare. Over my husband David, I declare. Name them. Because when you name them, the covering becomes personal, and personal coverings are stronger than general ones. If you live alone, read it over yourself and then declare it over the people you love, even if they are not present. The covering extends to those who are connected to you by covenant, by blood, and by love. This should take no more than 15 minutes. But those 15 minutes will seal your entire night. For the midnight declaration, set your alarm for 11:30 at night. Use the 15 minutes before 11:45 to prepare your heart. Read a psalm of praise. Thank God for the day. Let your spirit settle into a posture of authority. At 11:45, begin reading Psalm 91 slowly and deliberately. Finish before midnight. You should be completing the final verses as the clock approaches 12. Then, go to sleep under the covering you have just activated. You will notice a difference in the quality of your sleep within the first week. The dreams will change, the heaviness will lift, and the shadows will not return. One final note, you do not have to activate all 4 immediately. Start with 1, the one that speaks most to your situation. If your nights are your biggest problem, start with the midnight declaration. If your days fall apart despite morning prayers, start with the noon disruption. If you want maximum coverage from the beginning, start with the pre-dawn seal because it sets the tone for the entire day. Build the habit with 1 and then add the others over time. Within 3 weeks, the kingdom of darkness will notice. Within 2 months, your name will be moved to a different list. And within 6 months, if you are consistent, the monitoring spirits assigned to you will be reassigned to easier targets. That is not a promise I am making from my own authority. That is what I witnessed for 21 years in the kingdom of darkness. Now I want you to make one final declaration in the comments. Write this. My prayer schedule has changed. The enemy no longer knows my hours. Write it. Seal what God has done today. This is not just a video. This is a turning point. Your schedule has been exposed, but now you hold the blueprint to seal every gap. And when you write that declaration, you are joining thousands of other believers who are waking up to the reality that timing is not optional. Timing is the weapon. I spent 21 years as a prayer schedule monitor. I tracked hundreds of believers. I exploited thousands of gaps. I built files so detailed that other covens came to us for consultation. I was proud of my precision. I was proud of my efficiency. I was proud of how many lives I helped destroy. And then Jesus Christ found me. Not at a convenient hour, not during a Sunday service, not during an altar call where someone held my hand and led me in a prayer. He found me at 3 o'clock in the morning during an assignment. I was monitoring a family in Uyo, and the mother woke up and began to pray. I had tracked her for months. She had never prayed at that hour before. She always prayed at 6 in the morning, right before waking her children for school. But that night, something stirred in her spirit, and she got up at 3 and began to declare Psalm 91. She did not know why she was awake. She did not know I was watching. She simply obeyed the stirring. She did not even sit up properly. She knelt on the floor beside her bed in the darkness and began to speak. And as she spoke, something happened to me that I cannot fully explain. The words reached me, not as spiritual weapons, as truth. For the first time in 21 years, I heard Psalm 91 not as a threat to my operation, but as an invitation. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I realized I had never dwelled anywhere. I had only monitored. I had only tracked. I had only watched other people find shelter while I stood outside in the darkness taking notes. That was the night I left the coven. That was the night I chose the shelter. And that is why I am sitting here today telling you everything I know. My name is Arit Essien. For 21 years, I monitored prayer schedules for the kingdom of darkness. I knew when Christians prayed. I knew when they stopped. And I used that knowledge to destroy their lives. But Jesus Christ set me free. And now I am using that same knowledge to set you free. The kingdom of darkness knows your schedule. But as of today, you know theirs. And that changes everything. God bless you. And I will see you in the next testimony.